And this is another sutta that gets right to the heart of the matter. We learned in the Paticca Sutta, the primary sutta on dependent origination, that what the Buddha awakened to is that it is ignorance of Four Noble Truths that leads to all manner of confusion, deluded thinking, and ongoing stress and suffering. And in dependent origination, we saw that ignorance of Four Noble Truths is the requisite condition for fabrications to arise. And so a fabrication is a corrupted or perverted view of self in relation to the world that self is living in. And because of that corrupted view of self in relation to the world, greed, aversion, and deluded thinking, stress and suffering arises. That is the underlying condition rooted in ignorance that leads to everything that makes the Dhamma necessary. That's why we have an eightfold path, so we can recognize and abandon fabrications in all of their manifestations. So a human being whose mind is rooted in ignorance, every single thought is a fabricated thought. Now, it doesn't mean that as human beings we can't function in the world. In fact, many of us function very highly with a fabricated mind. Imagine how we'd function with a non-fabricated mind. This very short sutta describes clearly what fabrications are, and establishes 4 classifications for fabrications so that they're easily identified by a Dhamma practitioner. And it also describes, the Buddha describes, what it is like to be a human being without a mind rooted in fabrications. This is the Vipallasa Sutta, the Buddha's words. Friends, there are 4 fabrications of perceptions of the mind, of views. These 4 fabrications are confusing permanence with regards to impermanence. The first mark of existence, the 3 marks that we're studying, the first mark is anicca, or the impermanence of all things, and a misunderstanding of impermanence that leads to and continues a fabricated view. Confusing permanence with impermanence. Confusing pleasant with regards to stressful. Those things that are stressful, many of the things that we decide are pleasant, in fact, many of the things that we describe to ourselves as necessary for our happiness are only stressful. I remember a few suttas back where the Buddha teaches the allure and the drawback and the release from sensuality, sensual indulgence, which is what leads to fabrications. And in that sutta, the Buddha concluded the statement about sensuality by saying, all of the fabrications that we have, his statement was, in short, the allure and the drawback of sensuality is sensuality. It sounds almost like a riddle, but when you think about it, it is exactly because of the need for constant sensory stimulation that I need to distract myself in this moment. And I'll create very powerful and subtle strategies to continue doing that. Whether it's within a so-called spiritual or Dharma practice, or simply my Thursday night bowling league, all contribute to maintaining fabrications. Confusing the self with regards to not self. So this is the primary issue again too, confusing impermanence with permanence, confusing the self with not self, meaning confusing a view of not self with what is truly in reality a self, as we learned from the Dhatuvabhanga Sutta. I think that was 5 weeks ago. The Buddha described every human being as having 6 properties, period. In other words, if we look at ourselves, we can clearly identify these 6 properties, and there's nothing permanent that we can add to this. We cannot embellish this self at all, no matter how hard we try. And it is the nature of fabrications to provide that embellishment to the self. And we do it for the most understandable but deluded thinking, because we think we're not good enough or we need more of ourselves to function and be happy in the world, rather than just those 6 properties. An awakened human being takes refuge in those 6 properties. They take peace in those 6 properties because they stop the struggle with making more of a self than a self can possibly be. And the rest of the sutta explains that very well. The Buddha continues, confusing attractiveness with regards to what is unattractive. And we do that all the time, don't we? These are the four fabrications of perception of the mind of views. Let me just go over those again. Read them, just read them through. Confusing permanence with regards to impermanence, confusing pleasant with regards to stressful, confusing a self with regards to not self, and confusing attractiveness with regards to unattractiveness. Because of our own confusion, we confuse these basic and primary functions of the world we live in. These are the four fabrications of perception of the mind of views. The Buddha continues, there are four qualities of mind that are not fabricated. Knowing impermanence as impermanence, knowing stress as stress, knowing not self as not self, and knowing what is unattractive as unattractive. Knowing the allure and the drawback of sensuality is simply sensuality. It's all arising, these fabrications and the actions that follow from these fabrications are all rooted in ignorance. Does everybody see that? So the solution then is wisdom. The solution is knowledge. It's not something magical or esoteric, is it? If we identify the problem as there's a certain diva or God that is lacking participation in my life, if that's my belief, then I'm going to chase after some magical, mystical, or spiritual answer. If I understand that my problem, the problem that I'm hoping to address in my Dhamma practice, is ignorance of Four Noble Truths, if I understand that, then my focus will be developing understanding of Four Noble Truths as a Dhamma practice. If it's something else, then my Dhamma practice will be something else. That's an underlying teaching. Remember last week with Sister Vajira and the 5 classes, 3 talks, 5 talks, 3 classes on Dukkha. All relate, at least the Maha and the Kula Dukkha Kanda Sutta, relate stress first to sensuality and then directly to false beliefs or false dharmas. Significantly important. It's just a continuation of ignorance. The Buddha continues, there are 4 qualities of mind that are not fabricated. Knowing impermanence as impermanence, knowing stress as stress, knowing not self as not self, and knowing what is unattractive as unattractive. I know I read that twice for a reason. The Buddha used the term Anatta, a common term during his time, still today, to mean something completely different or contradictory to the common usage of the term. So the common usage of the term then and now, Anatta, is misguidedly taken to believe there's no such thing as a self. And that has led to all these foolish doctrines of emptiness or nothingness as a repository for the self. Where, as we've learned over and over again, the Buddha continually warned against establishing the self in any of those speculative ways. And that's what he's talking about too here, because they're only fabrications, and it can only lead to more fabrications. The Buddha taught to understand the quality of your mind right here, right now. And if right here and right now it's rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, there's something we can do about it. We can engage in the Eightfold Path and develop profound wisdom of Four Noble Truths. These are 4 qualities of mind that are free of distraction, free of fabrication. Perceptions, the mind, and views are fabricated when perceiving permanence in impermanence. The only thing that we can recognize as permanent in the ever-changing world is that the self is permanently changing. That's the only thing that we can rely on. And if we attach something that we hope is permanent to the self, meaning an ideological view, we're programming ourselves, we're setting ourselves up for confusion, deluded thinking, and ongoing stress and suffering, aren't we? Because we're basing our existence on a fabrication. The Buddha continues, when perceiving pleasure in what is stressful, when perceiving self in what is not self, when perceiving attractiveness in the unattractive, meaning clinging to fabrications. Now, the Buddha relates those people in a very direct and human way. These beings are destroyed by wrong view. Now, of course, he doesn't mean that they're annihilated completely. They're no longer in the physical existence. But their ability to rightly function, to become rightly self-awakened, is destroyed by their ignorance.
And their happiness is destroyed by it.
Everything, well, yeah. And any type of realistic existence in the world is destroyed by ignorance. No matter, we could live the most outwardly successful, whatever we might decide. Some people decide that it's money, power, prestige, looks, could be anything. It could be height. Whatever we decide that is, it's impermanent, it's fabricated. And I have to attach myself to it in order for it to be valuable to me, don't I? I have to have an ideological view of something as worth adding to myself in order to create that clinging relationship.
John, can an ideological view be considered something like extremely mundane, like I need my dog to behave right now, like, or something. Well, that was, I mean, that wasn't really what I was thinking. Anything like I was trying, an ideological, besides like a huge view, just I need X is an ideological view.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. An ideology can be grand or small. It doesn't have to.
Yeah. So we can.
It doesn't have to relate to something in a broad way.
Mm-hmm.
An ideological view could be, I'm a great dog trainer and I hope nobody ever sees my dog misbehave.
Yeah,
because it reflects on me if I take it that way.
And that's like those bigger views. But even something very small, like I need to have this other sip of coffee to feel okay.
Yep, those are all conditions that we place on ourselves. They're all fabrications. So you bring up a good point. All of it's fabricated. It doesn't mean that we don't enjoy a sip of coffee. It just means that we're not creating I-making over the cup of coffee. It's just what's occurring. That's all.
Yeah. You have to have the best cup of coffee.
Yeah.
You can't find it,
Yep. And we all know people like that.
Yeah.
We call that person a coffee snob, but people are snobs about all kinds of things. You pick anything and somebody is snobbish about it. They're eye-making about it.
They're snobby about not being snobby.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I remember I used to tell one of those, Brian, I used to tell him about I was the humblest person I ever met. That had something to do with humility. Let me continue. These beings have, let me go back because this line is so important. These beings are destroyed by wrong view. These beings have lost their minds. That's what true mindlessness means. And true mindlessness could have an aspect of mindfulness. Mindfulness means to hold in mind or to recollect. We can do that about anything, including false or speculative dharmas. That's an aspect of mindfulness that is actually mindless. These beings will find no rest, wandering aimlessly from birth to death. However, when awakened ones are present in the world, they bring light into the world. They teach the Dhamma that brings an end to stress. The wise will listen and regain their senses. I love that line. They will clearly know impermanence as impermanence. This is how we know if we're developing the Dhamma, or if there's gradations of this within our present experience, we know we're moving in the right direction. They will clearly know impermanence as impermanence, stress as stress, unattractive as unattractive. Having developed right view, they abandon, say it again, having developed right view, they abandon ignorance. So if you have a question about how to actually do this, how do you do it? How do you abandon ignorance? Develop right view through the Eightfold Path. Again, there's nothing ambiguous at all about what the Buddha taught. There's nothing complicated either. The difficulty with developing the Dhamma to its culmination is simply our own fabricated views. This is the essence of the problem. If there's anything that we find holding us back, we had a great discussion on, what's today? Saturday? On Tuesday. From two Sangha members, we all kind of got involved in it, about coming up to this block in our Dhamma practice, which really is our own aversion to letting go of views. And we talked about it in slightly different ways, but that is the essence of the Dhamma. If we fail in developing the Dhamma, it's because we're clinging to a view we refuse to let go of. And that view that we refuse to let go of is, as the Buddha teaches us and as we learned, there's nothing to it. It's like foam on the water. But if we're clinging to it, it can destroy our life, as the Buddha said. Again, destroy our life as far as having the opportunity to awaken, because we're so clinging to a fabrication. Everybody follow that? So the fabrications are like foam on the ocean, but they also have the power to literally take us out of our life.
I mean, that's what I'm looking at. Destroying life is just in any moment when we stick, we're dead.
Yeah, we're not living our life. That's what the Buddha called the throughout the Pali Canon, you'll read things like the deathless state. The Buddha described living a life of ignorance as a living death. There's no life in it. He doesn't attribute life to a human life lived in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. And if you think about that, it's simply true. If I'm living in this moment from a fabricated view, I'm not living in reality. I'm not seeing what's occurring clearly as it's actually occurring without any eye making. And so I'm simply not present for life as life occurs. There is stress. That's why. It's not necessarily because something that a self-referential ego self would judge as unpleasant. No matter what it is, no matter how pleasant this moment might be, if my experience of it is rooted in a fabrication, it's stressful.
I've never heard the deathless explained like that. That's fabulous.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
But that is the important thing. The Buddha didn't teach something. He didn't teach he didn't teach unlimited life, because that's an establishment. I don't know if you can understand. Yeah. That's an establishment of permanence, isn't it? Everything changes. The Buddha was concerned about how can a human being actually live their life. And he realized that in order for a human being to actually live their life, they actually have to be in their body to do that. And so he taught a Dhamma that unites the mind and the body and keeps it there through concentration and refined mindfulness, holding in mind the Eightfold Path. That's how it works. Let me finish the sutta. We're just about done. The Buddha's words: having developed right view, they abandon ignorance and bring to cessation all confusion, all deluded thinking, all stress and suffering. Pretty good deal, huh? By simply recognizing and abandoning fabrications. I'm going to just ask the general question, and then we'll go around the room and start with Karen. Do you understand fabrications, and do you understand how to abandon fabrications? And let's start with Karen. Good morning, Karen.
Hello.
Did you hear my question?
Yes, I did hear your question. How do we? Oh boy. With awareness of right view, I guess.
That's it. Very good. You did
Thank
well.
you.
How's everything else? How's your Dhamma practice going, Karen?
Oh, I'm just so excited about it. And I'm so glad I could be here on a Saturday. I wasn't sure I could do it, but so yeah. I might be able to continue twice a week.
That'd be great. It's so nice you can join us. I just always have to ask, how's things at Juan?
Things are good. Things are good. They're, quieting down. We have another retreat for our lay practitioners with Dharma names coming up next weekend. And then it'll be a little bit quiet until January.
Okay. I think we're going to see you in January, but I'll talk to you about that soon.
All right. Okay, great.
Glad you
Thank
could join
you.
us. Good morning, Jen.
Hi, good morning. Can you repeat your question again?
How do you know it's a fabrication?
How do you know it's
Well,
fabrication?
Tiger Woods would no.
Forgot what I asked.
Do you know what fabrications are? Do you understand them? And do you believe that you can abandon them? How?
Or how do you abandon them?
Yeah.
So fabrication is anything that you're adding to self, which is whatever is happening right now in this moment.
Yes.
And abandoning them is, yeah, recognizing them, and then at least recognizing, even if you can just recognize thoughts and feelings, your general sense of calm or stress. And if you are calm, you're most likely not fabricating. And if you're not calm, then you are fabricating. So then hopefully that'll bring you back in.
Thank you.
What's happening right now?
Good morning, Ronnie.
Good morning. I think it's a very good question, and actually, I probably, to be truthful, I would have to answer no. I don't fully see in my thinking which is a fabrication and which is not a fabrication. The only way I can really have a handle on it is if I can see myself as believing that I'm just six properties. If I ask that question to myself when I think I'm fabricating, I think I come up with the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
But in my day-to-day just routine thinking, I don't know if fabrications are drifting in my mind, I'm drifting out my mind, and all the little, what Mora, sorry. What Mora was, that little, you know, do I really need another sip of coffee? Am I really needing a sip of coffee, or do I really need a drink? You know, that, where does that come from? Where does that little, and all those little bits of things that we think about through our day, and tracing them back to, is it a fabrication? Is it, or not a fabrication? No,
Yeah, you can get caught up in the and analyze even those little things like having a sip of coffee and imagining the I making in it. In other words, making more of the I making that's already present.
Yeah.
Than simply, okay, I'm attached to this cup of coffee right now. Take a breath. That's it. Because if we get into the analysis of where that condition, you can't get to the bottom of that, can you?
No.
Nobody knows. And you can never know.
No.
You can never know. I mean, if you can remember an incident
I can't get to the bottom.
where somebody stole your coffee and made you compulsive about coffee, that's still not it. It's just what you believe is it. So it's just this dark, confusing hole of me trying to attach something else to something I'm already attached to. Well, but you talked about that earlier today about even I'm making as far as learning things.
Yeah.
But that's the recognition of the fabrication of it. That's the beginning of the cessation of fabrications. You first have to recognize you're doing it.
First have to know I have to, first have to know I'm doing it. So it is the first recognition. I see that, but having the will to change your thinking at that point and not just go on enjoying your fabrication.
Well, that's what the right effort in the Dhamma practice. In that moment, it's probably impossible, but in the next moment, it is possible. As long as your mind has a measure of concentration and you're developing the refined mindfulness of the Eightfold Path, in the moment you might not be in the Dhamma, but in the next moment, because of recognition, you are. And it's just that way. That's an example of impermanence too, by the way.
You can approach the whole thing with some humor. See yourself stuck in a fabrication. I'm stuck in a fabrication. And that's really the beginning of being able to abandon it. You know, it may feel like it's a little overwhelming, but once you put a little humor to it, that overwhelmingness kind of slowly fades away. Yeah,
I would say so. When you can see the absurdity of I-making, which is really the absurdity of human life, you know, you can get a couple of chuckles, and you might even get you might be shocked at times when you look at it that way. But you know, that's just the way it is. You know, the crazy things we do because of greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. I mean, really crazy. Look at the world. But the Buddha noticed that the same thing 2,600 years ago. It looked at the world. The world was a flame. A flame with what? The fires of passion, the fires of eye-making, the fires of fabricated views. Same problem 2,600 years ago, same problem today.
But you don't see him laughing his head off. You see him chuckling.
Yeah. Well, we do that here too, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have a couple of big laughs. You finished?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, great subject. Yeah, it's one of those major concepts, applications.
Yeah.
It comes up all the time. And a lot of the major suttas end with, and this is the end of fabrications.
Yeah.
Dhamma comes in there again. You know, fabrications come up, ending of fabrications.
Yeah.
And the subtleties are, you know, the big ones are usually easy to catch, but there's a lot of subtle stuff going on. And as you said, you can really get down the rabbit hole by trying to overanalyze that.
Yeah.
And you're actually going the wrong direction at that point. It's, in a way, yeah, I find it with a bit of humor in it. It's not such a daunting task because you know it's going to come up, and when it comes up, it's not a reason for stress. It's just look at me, I'm fabricating the hell out of this one.
Yeah, that's it.
And you know, and once you see that, look at it, it's like, well, do I really have to do this?
Do you really want to do it yourself? I mean, it's particularly useful when you're really feeling good about yourself. Realize, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is not me. This is there's nothing permanent here. That it tends to when you can do that, it relieves the stress in any moment because you're taking the stressor out of it, meaning me. This is what's occurring. You see the absurdity of eye making. It's always there.
And be grateful when you see the family. It'll come your way.
Yeah, that's right. Morning, Lisa.
Good morning, John. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here too.
This is kind of or one of the parts of the whole thing.
Yep.
It's really how we see ourselves and how we see things and how we react to life on a moment by moment basis. The mind wants to that things could be. It's simple, but it's so profound that it's kind of mind-boggling about how we construct things around, and I see it as a house of cards, and also the way our perceptions of things too are so limiting to what reality really is. It's so vast, and kind of like seeing anything, but the more you like magnify it, the more it changes. We're whatever size we are in this world, but if we were a different size, we'd see things completely different. But the human mind just wants to construct all this stuff, and I keep coming back to hear how to be in the moment and not want to like construct things around something just is, and we want to build all this stuff around it, and it's getting rid of all that stuff. but I tend to be a hoarder of stuff. And so I think, you know, it might be harder for me to get rid of all those constructs.
It might be, but it might not be.
Mm-hmm.
Were you done? The level of difficulty of letting go of those constructs is also a fabrication, because there's nothing really there except the aversion that we create, but it's all fabricated. If it wasn't, then the Dhamma would simply wouldn't be no Four Noble Truths. If it wasn't possible to recognize and abandon this particular ignorance, the entire Dhamma is irrelevant then. But of course, that's the point of it. Is the Buddha simply saying, hey, you don't know who you are in relation to the world we're living in. And so you fabricate things. That's what this sutta and many others are about. This gets right to the heart of the matter. This is the central sutta of the 32 suttas in this series, is fabrications. That's what we do. Thank you. Good morning, Maura.
Good morning, John. Thank you for also saying that it's a really good, when you're feeling really good about yourself, it's a really good opportunity too, because I think, I think that often gets lost in the Dhamma, that Dukkha it's all of it, when it's founded on a ignorant view.
Yep,
So,
the drawback is sensuality.
Wow, I did good on that, they like that. I heard a quote this morning, or I was reading something, it's like, Buddhists are not con men. They say things for what they really are, but they it was kind of the essence of it. I didn't get it right, but it's just that when you're talking from a place of the Eightfold Path, it's going to be received however it's received, and you're not concerned with that, So that's what I think. Got to check that. Buddhism not con men. We can argue that till the cows come home, but the question being. Do you know what a fabrication is, and do you know how to let go of it? My understanding of what the sutta today was fabrications. Fabrications are very normal from an ignorant view. There's the the normal experience of contact perception. The fabrications come like that, right? So it's not something to judge ourselves, as you clearly mentioned. Judging oneself about it only adds another layer of pancha on there. So, simply put, as was said, fabrications are any thoughts that are founded in an ignorance of impermanence, not self, dukkha, and a confusion about what is attractive, pleasant. Right? So if one is, and we can see it happen. I certainly, the experience of this being is that I can see that happening often, all the time. It's very, very subtle. It's very, and can be very large. And at the same time, there is a stronger current of wisdom that is tempering that, from moment to moment. So, like you had said, like humor, no, it's a fabrication, all of it. It's not all of it, but one can see the tightness. I think, Jen, you were pointing towards, there's also this felt sense of when we're in, view and wanting something to be permanent, from the most ridiculous to the very, profound. And that awareness of kind of like, this is, gosh, look at this. I just, brought up a whole story about the guy in front of me, the guy behind me, whatever, my own self, it's just, so there's a lightness to it. But So, and letting go of it is really looking at the impermanence, not self-characteristic, and the dukkha aspect that's coming up, and confusion about what is pleasant, what isn't. Pretty straightforward, eh? Do I get an A plus?
Yeah, you get an A. Thank you,
I
Laura.
find that last category of confusing attractive with unattractive, I'm a little puzzled by that.
Well, we oftentimes will in our lives, we may crave something at one point in our lives, at another point in our lives we don't. We don't want it. We don't want it in our lives. We confuse that all the time. We see things that are the biggest pile of gold is attractive to me. I'm going to go after it. I'm going to do everything I can. In fact, I'm going to give up my life, and I might even kill a couple of people and stray dogs to get it. It's unattractive, isn't it, in that way? We don't understand the attractiveness and the drawbacks of sensuality.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is just sensuality. It's not a certain type of sensuality that I judge a certain way, and this one's that's okay because it makes me feel good. That one's not because my neighbor. It's sensuality is sensuality.
It's sensuality.
Yeah. And that's why that line is so important. Thank you.
Anything from the six sense spaces, that thing that we talked about, whether it's hearing, whether it's a thought, right? So it's being caught in the apparent permanence of that which is not permanent.
Yes, and the sixth sense space is a key or a clue to where do we practice the Dhamma at the sixth sense space. That's why we have them. It's not why we have them, but it's where we practice the Dhamma at the interface between the inner world and my thinking and what's occurring, the outer world. And that can get pretty subtle. That inner and outer world could still be just within our thoughts when our thoughts are objectified. I don't want to get too deep into that, but that's really where we get caught up in that feedback loop. Nick, good to see you this morning.
Good to be here. Okay, let's see if I got this. Clinging and craving can create fabrication. If I'm clinging to something that happened in the past, I'm giving it permanence. I'm fabricating its existence. I'm fabricating its existence. If I'm craving something that's going to happen in the future, I am giving it permanence, fabricating it to be a reality. And so the clinging and craving to those things is what's creating stress, and stress protection.
Yeah.
Pretty close. Ultimately, you have it a little bit backwards, though. The initiating cause of all of that is ignorance of Four Noble Truths. And because of ignorance of Four Noble Truths, we create a fabricated view of ourself in relation to the world, which causes us to crave for wrong views of self and cling to and maintain those views once they're established. That's, if you read the Dependent Origination, you'll see that progression. So the significance is important. It's not because I'm clinging that I've created problems in my life. It's because I'm ignorant of four. Because if that's the case, all you have to do is tie your hands behind your back, metaphorically, and you're awakened because you're no longer grasping after things, are you? Of course, that's not the problem. The problem is inner ignorance of Four Noble Truths. And that's why the progression is important. And what you fell into an interesting trap, Nick, that is still the most common form of modern Buddhism, which is ascetic practices. Because it's thought that if I can deny myself what I'm clinging to, that'll free me from clinging. Of course, it's just the opposite, isn't it? That's what the Buddha practiced that, and many other so-called ascetics do. It's the idea of silent retreats as a form of asceticism. It doesn't seem to cure many people of talking too much. We can't
take offense to that.
I wasn't talking about you, but you can reference it. It's only because I think there's something missing in me that I crave for something more, isn't it? And the idea is always, the The idea is always an idea first and foremost. If I'm hungry, the first thing I think about is food. I don't eat it. I think about it first and then I go eat it. Our motivation is always our thoughts. So when we can change our thoughts and develop a way of thinking, whereas the Buddha says in Vipallasa Sutta, we gain the ability to think what we want to think when we want to think it, meaning that each and every thought that we have is relevant to what's occurring. It's not distracting us from something because there's no I-making, there's no craving or clinging left in it. It's simply a thought process rooted in an awakened human being while they're living within these 6 properties. Not a bad deal. Thank you, Nick.
Can I just
Please.
kind of restate what I'm hearing you say in response to what Nick said?
Sure.
Is that rather than, it's sort of like you want to be careful about your orientation. So the orientation is not to let go of craving and clinging. By letting go of craving and clinging, it has to be letting go of it by recognizing that I've developed a view of myself
Yes.
that needs whatever I'm craving and clinging after. So really the orientation is recognize how this version of myself has arisen that wants something. And that version is not really me.
And the hint
Yes.
there is that every time the Buddha doesn't say, don't cling, he says, this is not me. This is
Right.
not mine.
If you
And-
recognize that you're clinging, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not who I am.
Yes. And the word that he used to remind us of that our thoughts do not describe us, is anatta, which means not self. And so the Buddha's use of the word is the views you're holding of yourself do not accurately describe a self. They are not a self. And so what the Buddha is saying directly, not in any ambiguous way, your views of self are wrong views. Let go of the damn views.
But you said, Don, say that one more time, please. The views that you're holding of yourself do
Do
not,
not-
accurately describe a self.
Do not accurately
That's
let go of
a really
let go of the views.
good word there.
that they're wrong views.
And the idea that I can let go of something is a wrong view.
Do you know why? Do you know why you can let go of it? I know you know. Give me the answer. Why can we let go of these views that we're clinging to?
Well, I would say that.
But why can I? How come I can let go of it? Why can't you let go of my wrong view?
Confusing me.
Why
Why can't what?
can't you let go of my wrong view? Another way of
It's
asking
in
is
your
why?
head. It's only,
Only
in your
yeah.
head.
It's only me that can let go of my wrong views.
Yeah. It's
God can't, Buddha can't, Jesus can't, Donald Trump can't, nobody can.
I can
Except
only
me.
let go of those wrong views if I've made my own.
Yes, and how do I know to let go of, what views do I know to let go of? The views that would confuse permanence with regards to impermanence, the views that would confuse pleasant with regards to stress, and the views that would confuse self with regards to not self, and the views that would confuse attractive with regards to unattractive. Again, you could say those last 4 things is an entire Dhamma practitioner. And we should keep it that well focused. In other words, we can get just as analytical about what fabrications are as anything else. Well, this is what's important about fabrications. I fabricated a view of myself in relation to the world that I live in, and that promotes craving for and clinging to wrong views and the results of those wrong views, which might be an entire chocolate cake rather than one piece of chocolate cake. Again, just using a silly example. Or simply enamored with my own thoughts, which is really the ultimate problem, is protecting our thoughts. Jay, I didn't forget about you. It's good to see you.
Didn't, and having the cleanup spot in the lineup is difficult. Moving all over as usual.
Let's see it again.
So, somebody who I know, and I think you may know as well, is a hoarder. And we have had a cabinet full of records for 40 years without a turntable that works. But your identity is your library from college that you still have on a shelf, the records that you still have from 1968 or 69. I got determined to get rid of those records because we don't play them. And every time I walk by the cabinet, I feel bad because I think, well, I really should get it together and listen to these things. So your identity.
Yeah.
Society wants you desperately to have a distinct identity. You're a doctor, you're a mechanic, you're a carpenter. There's a real strong emphasis. Music. Well, you know.
And a collector.
Yeah. Do you need those books? We recently went to somebody's house for a political function. The woman had all her books on display, her historical books and all these things, so you could see her intelligence around the room. Very nice lady, as it turned out. But you know, eye making is just one of these things that we're learning here how to cope with.
Well, eye makers are some of the nicest people I've ever met.
Well, there's a tendency to want to do that, but when you realize you're doing it, you say, no, this is not. I mean, I used to be Jay the crane operator. Not Jay the crane operator anymore. In another 5 years, I know what I am sort of now, but it ain't that. And I know to keep an eye out. So those of you who have those old college books on your shelf and your records there, it was very liberating. I felt lighter as soon as the guy came, bought them from me, the whole bunch, carried them out. And I was like, wow, I feel better. Because every time I walked by, I was like, well, my identity is those records. You know, who else has Dewey Balfa and the Cajun hoo-has in their record collection? That's me.
Yeah.
You know, or who has, you know, the most old Stones albums, or, you know, what all. You know, so your stuff can become your identity if you don't look at it.
Yep. Everybody does that too.
I think so. Even those of us who are not enlightened, but educated, let's say.
Thank you, Jay.
Don't you think that some of those records today would be worth a lot of money?
I did 5 minutes before the guy came over to look at them. I got on the computer and checked some, and there are some that are worth $300 or $400 or $1,000. Usually ones that are signed. The kind of records that we have in our collection these days, you know, they're out of the folder. They, you know, they may not be in perfect condition. You could think that you had $1 million there. Basically, the guy gave me, I think, half of what they were worth, but he has to schlep them, he has to sell them, and all that. So, you know, I was happy to just get rid of them because, like I said, it made me feel a whole lot better.
I'll tell you what, though, we had that.
Thank you, Jay.
And a bunch of cameras.
Got them too.
Let's there was a
To be continued.
no, I didn't want to. There was a where Donna, did you say Donna?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to have our Donna dinner this year, and we may not have it next year either. But we are going to have a sangha dinner. We're going to get together. We're going to go to Bamboo House on Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. I think it's the 26th at 7 o'clock. How many of you think you'll attend?
Amazingly, I can be there.
What day?
Tuesday at 7 o'clock. There's a restaurant right up the street here, Bamboo House.
This coming Tuesday?
No, Tuesday of Thanksgiving week.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. And do you think you'll bring family or friends or anything like that? Anybody think you're gonna?
I might.
Alex, good.
Alex,
Nice
yeah.
to see him again. I'm just trying to give Kara a general idea of what to expect. I'm going to tell her 30 folks. I think that'll cover it. All right.
Do that
Are they
at
gonna
7 o'clock or
are
something?
they gonna
7 o'clock.
Is she gonna how are they gonna fit their people down?
They have an addition they just built there that holds 35 people.
Oh nice. So it'll be a private room?
Yep.
Oh awesome. That's good.
At least I think so.
Where is it?
Well, we're thinking of going to Liberty Hall, but they wanted a 22-person minimum and a $28 a head minimum. And I didn't want to get involved in either one of them.
Oh, but they have the best kale salad right now. The one tahini dressing. Oh my God!
So let's we'll finish with meta as
We all need it.
we'll finish with
I needed to be happy.
we'll finish with metta as we always do. So find your relaxed meditation posture. Take a moment to become mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. And these are the Buddha's words on metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class this morning. Peace. Thank you, Karen, for joining us.
Bye, Karen.
Bye, Karen.
Now I know where they're
Thank
going.
you.
See you, Karen.
Bye, Karen.